You've definitely played one of my decks before. You just may not have known it. In celebration of the 1,000 subscriber milestone that we just passed on this channel, we're going to be taking a look at a total of 10, 15, depends how you look at it, decks that I've made in the past. 5 are going to be decks that I made back then. We're going to take a look at the old build, and then we're going to look at a newer, updated, more current version, and then the other 5 kind of don't really have a before and after, so we're just going to go through those all one by one. Before we hop into each of the decks, I do want to say a big thank you guys to all the support. Hitting 1,000 this quickly on YouTube has been crazy, so appreciate anybody else who joins the journey by liking, subscribing, supporting in any way they can. And do be sure to comment if you actually have not played any one of these lists, because my money would be that you have. And what better deck to start with than the one that pushed me over the hump from, I believe, top 500 to my first time being in the top 100. It was my first deck ever featured on Pulse Glazer's YouTube channel due to just me reaching out one day while he was streaming on Twitch. I dropped my rank. I forget whether I was top 50 or whatnot at the time. I was like, hey, I'm playing this, completely unique, nobody has it. And he was like, sure, I'd love to see it. And it kind of got rolling downhill from there with me being able to share decks through Pulse Glazer and eventually a lot more of the other content creators in the community. But it did start there. And it started with a Moonstone clog deck. This is around the time of Moonstone's release herself, and this deck is still kind of powerful. You can get a little bit of surprise value. What this deck sought to do was play a game with very low power on the board, and you get all your power at the very end of the game by cheating really hard on energy with Ravonna and Moonstone together. Gives you a 3-cost Iron Man, a 4-cost Gore, your Mystique and Sage go down to 1 cost along with your Green Goblin. So a combination of those cards were able to win one lane, and then the way you won the other was being able to shut somebody out early with a combination of your clog cards, such as Titania, Acid Arrow from Kate Bishop, Green Goblin, Debris, and you even had the Daredevil to help you out and assist on this game plan. For me, this list got a lot of surprise value as it was a completely original cook and idea. No one really had any idea what to expect when they were playing against it, I should say. And I kind of had asymmetrical information given that fact, and given cards like Daredevil, you're able to do really powerful things in this deck, such as a lot of times you can play a 1-cost Green Goblin or an Acid Arrow in conjunction with a Titania on turn 5 under a Daredevil, and you're playing down a magic to extend the game in the location that you clogged to where they cannot Scarlet Witch it or play a Merlin spell down. They couldn't do any of that. Speaking of which, Merlin, he wasn't even released, which is a good point. A lot of these old decks that we're going to look at might not be completely viable. You might need to make some alterations. For instance, in this deck, Debris, she's a 3/8 now and only puts rocks on your side of the board. She used to be, 3/3 both sides actually? So she's a lot less useful of a clog tool. You definitely want to change her out if you are going to revisit this. Here is a more updated version of that very same principle. It took a lot of iterations to end up here, but a lot of you would be familiar with this Mr. Positive or Pseudo-Negative. It's gone by. It never really had a definitive name, but it's still trying to do the same thing. The core identity of the deck is the same. We are a Ravonna Moonstone deck, and we are cheating Gore, Iron Man, Mystique, and Sage. Additionally, we are cheating in this deck by playing Esme Cuckoo to get a cheap copy of one of those cards, along with Anti-Venom to do the same thing. Anti-Venom hitting something like a Sage, a Gore, an Iron Man, a Mystique. All of them are extremely great hits, and you just love to see it. You have the Surge in here for a way to soft cheat energy, although, again, it's been a while since I've revisited this deck, and it used to be your Mystique was 0 power, your Gore was -1 power, and everything you hit with your Surge Even though it had an additional power buff, it didn't lose the Ravonna discount. But now that Gore is a 6-1 and Mystique is a 3-1, you probably want to change Surge out if you revisit this, because she would make your cards conflict with Ravonna. A card that's in there that's a little non-intuitive would be the Hawkeye Kate Bishop. She's pretty much just here in order to get extra bodies for your Gore. Some variations that I've ran of this also have a Werewolf by Night in instead of the Esme Cuckoo, so that could be a direction you could take the list. You could play Merlin instead of Surge, and you could play a Werewolf instead of that Esme. Going in a bit of sequential order, we're going to look at BYU next, which was honestly, I think it was my most popular deck I've ever created. That was the most widespread, and this was right after the last deck. I was going back through a KM Best tier list the one day because I had an idea. Oh, what about that Afflict deck that was just running the High Evolutionary for the Abomination, didn't care about anything else, and I wanted to revisit that. I knew in the past it used to be a tech deck, so I did start out by trying to run those cards until I realized, wait a minute, we just had Rocket and Groot release, we just had Captain America Sam Wilson release. This could be really cool to introduce some move synergy, get the Miles Morales in, and have a final turn of a free Abomination, a giant Ajax, and a 1-cost Miles, which is where the genesis of this deck came from. At the time I made this, Laufey wasn't out, so I was running Man-Thing personally, but good friend Roram came along upon Laufey's release, which I knew Laufey would slot into here, but the more visionary thing was Roram put a Grand Master in place of whatever other 2-drop I was running at the time. I'm not really sure, but Grandmaster has a lot of synergy with the Laufey, being able to afflict 2 full lanes and often getting your Abomination super cheap and your Laufey super big and your Miles discounted. Overall, it's a really fun deck, although it does struggle a little bit on the power output side nowadays. And most of that can be attributed to the big red dragon Shou Lao, which you do see in the updated version of this list. Crazy to think that the Afflict-move list cut Ajax for Shou Lao, but he is just that good. He's typically a little bit bigger, and he is very nice that you're able to spread out and attack multiple lanes on the final turn of the game. There's been very many iterations of this style list, but this one is a Werewolf by Night variation that abuses the interaction with Prowler, where you get 2 free spells that both move your werewolf. One of them afflicts. They both help you enable your Shou Lao game plan. Same with the Wasp from the High Evolutionary. She helps you with the Shou Lao game plan as well. There used to be a Deafening Chord in here in the Majestic Wingbeat slot, but with that being changed to no longer give the Afflict, it does not cheapen the Abomination, so I put in Majestic Wingbeat, which can cheapen the Abomination, and it synergizes very well with Joaquin Torres, enabling you to get 310 Shou Laos or 313 base Abominations. Overall, this list just seeks to do a lot of points super late in the game with very flexible allocation. At a similar point in time, I also had a lot of fun messing around with this Dawan style Surfer list, where we were running Dawan and Brood as buff recipients, Grandmaster as a force multiplier to hit either of them, Frigga also as a force multiplier to hit either of them, and Galacta as the main way for us to buff them. This list was super powerful around the time of its release, as Galacta was still giving +3, enabling your Brood to just be 315 automatically. If you had a Forge buff lined up onto it, it would be even bigger. It would be a 321. You Grandmaster, that's enough in itself to win 2 lanes. But the bread and butter here, don't be fooled, is to play down a Dawan to frigate back to hand, play a second one down along with a Bullseye, and Grandmaster one of your Dawans to where you end up with 3 shards, and sometimes you can even get a Surfer buff onto your Dawans, and then they're both 6, they go to 12, they go to 24, they go to 48. Given you can get exponentially crazier than that with very favorable Forge hits, surge, rolls, locations, all of that can affect it. But this list is still doing powerful things in the current day and age. And here's what it looks like now. This list was heavily influenced by Iris, who took a different variation of the old one following Galacta's nerf, where she replaced the 4-drop with a Moon Girl, brought it to a Golden Gauntlet, did really good. She added the OG Gambit that I almost forgot to put in the deck, along with the low curve 1-drops of Quinjet and Agony alongside Nico Minoru. I played this list a lot, off and on, here and there, since she created that, but following the release of the new Gambit Horseman of Death, this deck really had a resurgence for me. He serves as another target to copy with your Frigga or with your Moon Girl, and can do extremely powerful things when you get 3 or 4 of them down onto the board. Victoria Hand is a complementary piece with both of your game plans here, as she buffs every single thing you create, and you also love to copy her yourself. I will say, stay tuned with this list, as we have Mother Ascani coming out really soon, and it's going to be an immediate home for her in this list for me. So expect a video on that when she does release. Next, we're going to take a look at one of my favorite lists ever, which is Infinity Ultron Agamoto. A lot of people ask me, how do you go about making a list? What's your inspiration? And honestly, it very much varies, but a lot of the times, for this one in specific, I was at work, I detail cars, I have an LLC, so I was at a customer's house doing work and just finished up a job, and it just hit me. Wait a minute, Infinity Ultron, Agamoto, want to get you both? I was like, wait a minute, Infinity Ultron and Agamoto both work with Quinjet very well. They both want to be ramped out with Luna Snow, and you love to get extra copies of your Infinity Ultron with the images of Icon. So with all that overlap in mind, this list was formed at the time. Juggernaut was a 3 cost. I believe Galacta was in here instead of the Fastos. It was a different time. A bunch of cards got nerfed. Quinjet lost a point. Zabu lost a point. Surge lost a point. Sam Wilson got nerfed a lot. Gwenpool got nerfed. You can go on and on and on. Arguably, Infinity Ultron got nerfed in the Agamoto build specifically because he used to be a 5/8 and would get really large when you were able to multiply him with the Redstone and with the Purple Stone that you were reducing the cost of. There are still people experimenting with current versions of this list, such as Big Baby, where they're running the new Gambit Horseman of Death, since he synergizes with the amount of spells that you've played. So it's very much still a adjustable deck to the current meta, very playable. Honestly, I think it's probably something worth revisiting. The updated version of that list would be a surprise to absolutely nobody. This has been probably my most played list of the entire year. My first video on YouTube was covering this. It's been the main inspiration for the spin-off decks that are running Strife and Foom instead of the Infinity Ultron and Wong, as well as the version that cut the Infinity Ultron and Quinjet for the Iceman and Ramatut that KM Best made. If you want a full video breakdown, go back to the first video on my channel. There's a very in-depth guide along with some gameplay segments, but the genesis of the idea here is we're not duplicating the Infinity Ultron with an images of Icon, but we have a Wong, we have a Silver Surfer for steps. We'll probably end up with 4 stones, and Shou Lao serves as a soft red stone to where you're able to buff your Infinity Ultron even when you don't generate one. It also just dawned on me that I meant to say Purple Stone, same when I was covering the last deck. Purple Stone is the one that duplicates the power, Red Stone copies it. Following the YouTube train of thought, the next list we're going to talk about is Torch Tribunal. This is another OG homebrew of mine that came around when Sparky first released, and Human Torch was just freshly made from a 1/2 to a 3/3. This list has been nerfed in a multitude of ways, such as Aranya now gives 1 less on her buff, Sparky now gives 1 less on his buff, and so Sparky now gives 1 less on his buff, and Human Torch has 1 less power on base. All of these three things combined make it feel pretty hard to get a Human Torch large enough to win a lane. as well as the inconsistency of your only win con being playing Human Torch and Tribunal and nothing else. So to account for that, we are now making the power of our own cards greater with stuff like Agony and Symbiote Spider-Man, and we have a backup win con of making many multiple men. The recent change to the Penny Parker and multiple man interaction was the OG inspiration for this updated list, along with Jet cooking with that and making his Phoenix Force deck. Similar to Infinite Exodia, I currently have a YouTube video guide for this from last week, so if you are interested in a full card-by-card analysis and some gameplay, do go check that out. Now we are jumping into the more one-off decks. The following 5 are just going to be one build variation, as there's not one that... Alright, we are now jumping into the 5 one-off lists, either due to there is no updated version of the list, I didn't update the version of the list, or I didn't create the original version of the list. Whatever the case may be, I'm only going to talk about the ones that I did make. And what better way to start than with the tournament-winning Batroc deck. This looks way different than the current day builds look, but do be aware that a lot of cards have been nerfed. Mercury used to be a 2/2, Cosmic Ghost Rider used to be a 5/8, I think Cannonball even was a 5/8, so a ton of points have been taken off this list, causing it to feel a lot worse than the current Batroc decks. Also, it was really teched out to the meta at the time, hard targeting, stuff like End of Turn, Move, Mirrors, and Mr. Negative type decks that were cheating a lot with Mobius. If I were to play Batroc today, I would play the Suji build. As much as I'd like to claim credit for that, which I cannot, I was playing a version very similar to the current Suji builds, where I had Juggernaut instead of Supergiant, and I maybe had a second 5-drop in, and I was like, I believe I tagged Stefan in the Discord, and I was like, hey Stefan, what do you need to be a Supergiant deck? Because I'm playing Batroc with just Cosmo, Juggernaut, and maybe a CGR, maybe it was a Cannonball. And I'm like, this is farming, like, can I just add Supergiant to it? And then I don't play the game for a few days, and next thing you know, Stefan went and made a Supergiant build and is crushing with it. So I'd like to at least attribute some of that to me. Next, we're going to look at the Tribunal deck. First builds of this originated from Hella Enjoyer, and I did play a ton of these on my journey to becoming a well-known top infinite player, but the most popular and current build of the deck did come from my noodle, along with taking heavy inspiration from Splat. I believe Splat had this deck down to literally 1 or 2 cards away, playing his all-in Mr. Fantastic combo. He was running things like Adam Warlock for draw consistency there, and I was like, instead of Adam Warlock, what if we just add a whole nother win line to where we're not so baked in on drawing the Mr. Fantastic? And I added in the Living Tribunal, and this deck has pretty much been the same ever since, and it's been evergreen ever since. If you played Marvel Snap for any amount of time, exactly what's going on here and what the goal of the deck is. Moving forward, this Pixie Man Spider deck marks my first collaboration with fellow content creator KM Best, which was really cool. I was able to hop on stream with him, run some games of this list live with us both talking through the play lines, and then he did make it a whole deck guide on its own. What's going on here is we want to make as big of a Fallen One as possible, get as much energy as possible, and do our entire combo on the final turn of the game. That combo is either Fin Fang Foom plus a Taskmaster to duplicate the power, or it is a Man Spider plus a Taskmaster to duplicate that power. The Man Spider line obviously has a higher ceiling, being able to duplicate his effect with stuff like Agony or the Spider from Penny Parker. But being a deck that's so good at throwing priority is really good for us being a Foom gamer. The addition of Pixie to this list gives your opponent a hard time to figure out what's happening on the final turns of the game, although it is very telegraphed when you are setting up a Symbiote Spider-Man for a Fallen One, So do be careful for Cosmo if you go to pick this list up around the time of making it and playing it to great success. Cosmo was almost nowhere to be seen, so that was not a concern for me back then. Next up is a deck good friend Roram affectionately named Eve. This one almost comes from a high infinite gamer named Fox. I ran into him on ladder a couple times one night playing something very similar to this. I believe he had Blob over Sage, and he might not have had a card like Frigga. I'm not entirely sure of the specifics, but I believe I changed 2 to 3 cards, overall upgrading the win rate and efficiency of the list. And this one, still to this day, is one of the coolest decks that I've ever made to play. It's so much fun, the different win lines that you'll come across, and a lot of that hinges on what you get off your anti-venom. If you get a free Man Spider off your anti-venom, you get to play down a Man Spider, say onto an Agony, followed by a Hulk Buster, and you get to Frigga it back to hand, and you get to have a second one that still costs 0 and will double again. If you do go to play this list, do be very aware that you do not want to be running out your Gambit early under almost any circumstance. You want to be holding that guy till a turn 6 play as often as possible. Normally that looks like doing a Gambit plus a Ghost Rider with the extra energy from Luna Snow. Or it could look like doing a Gambit plus a Sage. But the fundamental theory going on here is we want to use first Ghost Rider to get a targeted discard onto our Taskmaster. Then we would like to play something like an Anti-Venom, following up with a Man Spider onto a lane that already has Agony in it. The Man Spider will merge with the Anti-Venom, going from 8 to 16, merging into Agony, going from 19 to 38. And then when you play Ghost Rider on the following turn, the Taskmaster will come back, we'll see the 38 power Man Spider, and we'll get all of its power copied to it while you get to play a secondary card somewhere else. And lastly, the 10th archetype that we are going to look at is the current most popular build for Beta Ray Bill / the Thor's archetype. This one was original and from me, and I originally had Ensabanor instead of Strife, although Strife was not out yet. I do believe Strife serves to make the deck better, as he can copy things like Odin or Foom when you otherwise would not really be able to play them out. But the basic premise here is we are going to cheat really hard with Pixie. We're going to play a lot of on reveals to make our gore huge, and we're going to use stuff like Lockjaw to throw the hammers or the wasp back into deck to cheat out a big card in return. I also have a YouTube video for this list on the channel, so if you would like a more in-depth breakdown followed by some gameplay, do be sure to go through my catalog and go check that out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed a little walk down memory lane with me. I know I did, going through my photos to figure out what did these old builds look like. I love each of these decks in different ways, and I hope you guys have at least played one of them before. But for the decks that I have not revisited yet on the channel, which one would you guys like me to make a video on? I know stuff like Batroc would be popular that I have not looked at. The Eve deck was super popular when I made it. Even like a Living Tribunal I haven't made a video for yet. So let me know what you guys are wanting to see, and I'll look forward to making it. Those of you who watched all the way to the end, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for 1,000 subscribers. I'll see you in the next one.